Hello and welcome to People and Profit, where we look at how business shapes our world. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, taxing times for multinationals. We're asking how governments can get their tax policies right to ensure big firms are paying their way. A tale of two search engines. As Google's parent becomes the world's most valuable company, we look at what's gone wrong for rival Yahoo. Plus, a designer dilemma, how luxury brands in China are being hit by the economic slowdown. First though, is there a right way to make big international companies pay more tax? The British government hailed their recent €170 million settlement with Google as a victory, but many critics felt the sum was far too low. It comes as there's increasing pressure from the European Union on brands like Apple and Starbucks over their tax arrangements in Europe. Yuka Royer has more.
€172 million worth of back taxes covering the last decade. The UK government patted its own back for the deal.
I want the message to go out that in Britain taxes are low, but they have to be paid, and I expect more companies to follow suit.
The opposition called it a joke, estimating that the fee amounted to a 3% tax rate, well below the 20% UK corporate tax. The EU started investigating the agreement. In recent months, the Commission has been stepping up its crackdown on tax avoidance by multinationals. Starbucks, for example. Its European operation is based in the Netherlands, but it pays a huge royalty to a sister company in Britain for coffee roasting know-how and buys beans at very high prices from a firm in Switzerland, thus lowering taxable profits. Another example, Fiat's financing wing based in Luxembourg. It lends money to manufacturers like a bank. Here also, the firm's profits are artificially reduced through complex methods. In both cases, the EU says the arrangements amount to illegal state aid. To counter the widespread practice of profit shifting and artificial profit reduction among multinationals, the Commission has announced a set of new measures for member states to apply. Corporate tax avoidance is costing EU countries €50 to €70 billion a year.
The Commission is clear that all companies must pay their fair share of taxes where they earn their profits. We are also actively tackling loopholes.
The United States, meanwhile, says the EU is unfairly targeting US multinationals. But the European Commission insists the rules apply to any companies operating in Europe.
Well, let's get more on this taxing problem now. We're joined by Pascal Santamore from the Centre for Tax Policy at the OECD here in Paris. Thank you for joining us. You recently had 31 countries sign up to a deal aimed at cutting corporate tax avoidance. What exactly have they signed up to?
They have signed up a technical agreement, a competent authority agreement, namely, to exchange information on what we've called country-by-country reporting, which will be an obligation on companies to disclose their tax planning picture. Where do they put their profits? Where is their turnover, their sales? Where are their employees? Where are their assets? And they will do that on a country-by-country basis, which will show to the tax administrations whether they're trying to game the system or not. And the 31 countries have just agreed to exchange that information as soon as next year. But this is only one very small element of a broader package which was approved by the leaders of the G20 in November in Antalya, which includes 15 measures, country-by-country reporting being one of them. Now, only 31 countries, but there will be many more in the course of the year.
This deal we've had between the United Kingdom and Google recently to repay some back taxes, does that help your cause on an international basis that a company is doing a deal with one country?
It just shows that for the past, the countries were not equipped with the right instrument. Where in the past you couldn't find what we call a permanent establishment, or you couldn't find the location of all the intangible property, you know, the algorithm in Bermuda. You couldn't do anything, therefore you couldn't collect much. For the future, the governments will be equipped. Google will no longer be able to put its intangible property in Bermuda. It will be in California or in Ireland if you have R&D teams, research and development teams, or in the UK or elsewhere. But for sure, the profit will now be allocated to the real countries where things are happening.
A lot of the high-profile cases we've had in this area that we've heard about have been big American companies. Google, Starbucks, Apple, all being criticised for different tax arrangements in different places. The US Treasury came out recently and said they were being unfairly targeted by this cooperation, these particularly European Union investigations. Do you see that in your work? Do you think this is a policy that will unfairly affect disproportionately affect American companies?
You have two aspects. One is the EU investigation from a state-aid perspective. The EU Commission and the competition part of the EU Commission saying, well, there were some tax deals which unfairly advantaged a number of companies. And it is the case that largely these are multinational, US multinationals, where more recently on the Belgian mechanism of that we call excess profit, it's largely European companies which have benefited from it. So it's a bit mitigated there. But what I can say is that this project that we've carried out is not against US multinationals. It's not against multinationals, Europeans or Asian. It's just about fairness, making sure that the large players pay the same amount of tax as the local player, the purely domestic, small and medium-sized companies.
The other issue is that there are widely differing corporation tax rates across, even within the EU. It's a very controversial issue politically. Would harmonising tax rates help make it easier to tax multinationals?
In an ideal world where 200 countries across the world would agree on a common base, because please keep in mind that tax is the product of a base and a rate. So you can harmonize rates. If you don't harmonize bases, it doesn't make any sense, and the other way around as well. So if you want to harmonize, you would need to get 200 sovereign countries to agree on that. It's not feasible. Maybe it would be wishable in an ideal world. It's not feasible. So what you need to do is just to make sure that these sovereignties can interact with each other and that taxes are paid where the profits are located, because you have the R&D, because you have the value creation, because you have the customers, you have the sales. And that's what we are doing. It's pragmatic. It may be a bit less sexy, but it's pragmatic and it will happen.
Pascal Santamore from the OECD, thank you for joining us. Next, to a tale of two search engines. Alphabet, the parent company of Google, has become the world's most valuable firm after reporting bumper profits. The resulting boost in their share price knocked Apple off the top spot. Technology expert Jonathan Rubini says Alphabet's success is down to its investment in the future.
It's actually the trend. The fact is Alphabet is doing very well. They're not making more money than Apple. They're actually making much less money than Apple. But the advantage they have is they're working on a lot of projects that are good for the future.
So while Alphabet's been rising up the ranks, Yahoo has been struggling to keep up. Kate Moody's here to look at their contrasting fortunes. Kate.
Well, Stephen, for Alphabet, it's really been the best of times. In its latest results, we've gotten a better idea of where the company makes its money. The core business, the Google search engine, YouTube and Gmail, was the key earner, with more than $21 billion in revenue for the fourth quarter of 2015. A whopping 70% of that came from ad revenue, and clicks on those paid ads rose by a third. Because it maintains a steady stream of income, Alphabet has freedom to dabble in what it calls its other bets, things like self-driving cars, robots, and Google Glass. They lost over $1 billion in the fourth quarter and $3.6 billion for the year, but investors have welcomed the transparency offered by the new parent company, and those other bets are keeping Alphabet on the cutting edge of new tech advances. It's a very different story at what was once a top rival. In 2000, Yahoo actually used Google technology to power its own searches. That helped Google jump ahead and become the world's leading search engine, leaving Yahoo trailing in fourth place. Revenue has also slumped. Yahoo's earnings peaked at $7.2 billion in 2008 and have dropped by a third since then. Yahoo's fallen behind the curve in its advertising business and is facing competition from new challengers, too. Some of its new ventures haven't taken hold, with Chief Executive Marissa Mayer forced to axe projects and cut 2/5 of the workforce. Another headache is Yahoo's 15% stake in the Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba. That was once a prized asset that brought in billions, but plans to sell it off have stalled. Yahoo's now even considering spinning off its core internet business in an effort to stay in the Silicon Valley race. Stephen?
Kate, thank you for that. Now, there have been yet more indications of the slowdown in the Chinese economy. Even the richest people in China are reining in their spending. Chinese consumers account for a third of all luxury purchases in the world. But as the world's second largest economy cools, the shops have been emptying out. This report from Clémence Dibou and Duncan Hewitt in Shanghai.
Huaihai Road, one of Shanghai's smartest shopping streets. Major brands have flocked here to cater to China's booming luxury market. But recently, business has been slower. Sales staff spend much of their time waiting for customers.
I prefer to buy in Europe because actually it's cheaper, about 20 to 30% cheaper than you buy in China.
Rich Chinese people make almost 8 out of 10 luxury purchases outside China. High taxes, a falling stock market and an economic slowdown all mean that the wealthy are deserting the stores. The luxury sector has also been hit by China's anti-corruption campaign. Launched in 2012, it targets ostentatious gifts like luxury alcohol and watches. Cognac, always popular in China, has had to look for new opportunities.
There was a slowdown in 2013 and 2014, but nowadays we're targeting the middle class. We're talking about more than 300 million people with similar incomes to people in Europe, with 7 million new consumers every year.
With salaries that have grown 10% a year, it's not surprising China's urban middle class has attracted luxury brands and marketing agencies. But experts say consumers are now becoming more selective.
Due to the economic slowdown, the public is becoming more demanding. It pays more attention to the price, and the brands try to adapt their position, offering the same models but with less expensive materials. They offer collections with more affordable prices for Chinese consumers.
Some brands have already cut sales prices on China's high streets, but analysts predict the luxury market will continue to shrink this year.
That's it for this programme, but if you have any thoughts on the stories we've been covering, you can get in touch on Facebook on our page France 24 Business, or you can tweet me at NewsStephen. Until next time, thanks for watching.